Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Denise Keel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Climate Action Network. I will serve as the moderator for today's press conference, and will take any questions from the media at the end. We are live streaming this event. We have such a stellar lineup of clean water advocates to speak with you today that I'm going to take the opportunity at the beginning to set a little bit of the larger context and the history of the Kalamazoo watershed that I call home. Because as the saying goes, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. After thousands of years of Potawatomi settlements, the modern era industrial age turned the Kalamazoo River into a dumping ground for the paper industry, resulting in PCB, polychlorinated biphenyl contamination, as well as sewage, other industrial charges, and trash, which contributed to the pollution of the river. Most people who lived in Kalamazoo in the 1940s to the 1960s avoided the river. The reports tell of a foul odor, devoid of fish, too toxic to swim. In short, the Kalamazoo had become an industrial river. In 1953, a massive photo of a fish kill made the cover of Life magazine, but the public reaction to that contributed to the birth of the United States environmental movement. Serious efforts to clean up the river were made beginning in the 1970s with the Clean Water Act and following the 1990 designation as a Superfund site. When I arrived in Kalamazoo in 2009, the Superfund cleanup was the first issue that I worked on. And in a demonstration of the power of civic engagement like you're seeing today, local citizens were successful in stopping even more hazardous waste from being dumped on our riverbanks. Since then, thanks to the continued engagement of local groups like the Kalamazoo River Watershed Coalition and Kalamazoo Remembers that are here today, several sections of the river have been restored, several dams have been removed, the river was recovering, wildlife and people were returning as we are here today to enjoy it. And then, after all this river has been put through and all the cleanup that had been done, 15 years ago in 2010, another catastrophic blow occurred when the Line 6B pipeline operated by Enbridge Energy burst and released over 1 million gallons of tar sands crude oil into the river, contaminating a 30-mile stretch, the country's largest land-based oil spill at the time. It continues to impact the people and wildlife here. And of course, the impacts of Enbridge's products go beyond even our shoreline and the devastation here, causing climate change. A report just released by the Environmental Law and Policy Center, our legal team that represents MyCan in the fight to shut down Line 5, they found that the Great Lakes region is continuing its rapid rate of warming with sweeping implications for our ecosystems, public health, infrastructure, and local economies. Sadly, what's even worse, the direct impacts like the Kalamazoo oil spill are not an isolated event. Enbridge has allowed Line 5 to spill at least 33 times since 1953, releasing another 1 million gallons of oil into the environment. The Canadian fossil fuel giant has an abysmal safety record, refuses to be transparent about its operations, and continues to operate Line 5 in the Straits of Mackinac despite being in violation of state orders. And now Enbridge wants us to trust them to build a tunnel in one of the most ecologically sensitive areas in the world. A tunnel project that, mind you, also will lead to a net increase in 27 million metric tons of greenhouse gases annually. So we are here today to learn from our past and to not let Enbridge continue to steal from our future. We are joined by origami fish that were folded by people from all over the world in nearly every state who support our cause. And today you will hear from the water advocates and the advocates around the state, people who are impacted by Enbridge's failures, the people who work every day to clean up the messes and to make rivers like this enjoyable again, all while fighting to save 20% of the world's fresh water from the same devastation we had here. I'd like to invite first up Dr. Nichole Keway Biber. She's an organizer with Clean Water Action here in Michigan. Nichole.
Miigwech. Ani. Nichole, Keway, Biber, Nadijnakas, Nikwejong, and Dojaba, Waganakasina, Nishna, Bekwe, and thou, Mishike Dodem, and thou, Wabananang ago. So, the poisonous violence perpetrated upon these river waters 15 years ago was a preventable, predictable, and purposeful outcome of continuous, irrational extraction for the sake of profit. Extracting oil, extracting indigenous people from our homelands, languages, and culture. I often struggle to give myself permission to feel joy and love when I see wildlife or even think about wildlife, because the knowledge of the ongoing threat to each of those lives is just so painful. I'm so heartsick to continually witness our more than human relatives being dismissed as expendable, as nuisances, as insignificant, despite their necessary work and their own right to raise their families. Mayingan, the wolf, is supposed to be stewarding the balance in every county in this state. A beaver, is supposed to be as widespread as the rivers are supposed to be, ever shifting their boundaries, evolving, abundant, and alive. The very place that the slipshod Line 5 tunnel scheme would dig up and destroy and pave over, we know as the heart of the Great Turtle. That is a sacred place, reminding us of our responsibility to Adikamek, the whitefish, who promised us continued life as long as we protect them. Their numbers are collapsing. They need us all to focus on restoration, but instead, our governing agencies seem determined to check all the boxes required to expand the insult of a 70-year-old plus pipeline that never has and never will be deemed acceptable by our sovereign tribal nations or by any person who understands that we cannot drink oil. Warnings abound alongside all of these losses, and we are here today to yet again warn all who rely upon shared, irreplaceable waters that Enbridge is not to be trusted to do anything other than serve their corporate shareholders. Our Anishinaabe prophecies confirm that we have reached a time of stark reckoning, where we will either choose the path of technological lies that leads only to further destruction, or we will light that eighth fire and choose the path of earth restored to living, breathing abundance for all nations who walk, crawl, fly, and swim upon our one and only home. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Nichole, for being here. MyCan is a proud founding member of the Oil and Water Don't Mix Coalition. I'd like to welcome the coordinator, Sean McBrearty.
Thanks, Denise, and thanks to everybody for being here today. 15 years ago, Enbridge not only spilled oil into the Kalamazoo River, but Enbridge knew the cracks in the pipeline were there. Enbridge knew the pipeline wasn't safe, even when they told Congress the opposite. When the pipeline began to spill here, Enbridge's experts misread their own gauges. They thought there was blockage in the pipeline, and they increased the pressure in Line 6B. Enbridge's failures were the only reason why over 1 million gallons of oil had to be spilled here. This was not a natural disaster like a hurricane or a flood. This was entirely man-made, and it was only as big as it became because of the negligence of the people who now the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the federal government are asking us to trust the Great Lakes with. Oil and water don't mix started in northern Michigan when organizations came together because of the Kalamazoo oil spill. Without the tragedy and the sacrifice that happened here, I don't know that we would be talking about Line 5 as much as we are today. Line 6B became an unfortunate cautionary tale that birthed a movement that says never again are we going to let major corporations like Enbridge spill oil into our rivers. A movement that says we're going to protect our Great Lakes and make sure that the same company responsible for this oil spill does not strike again, this time with a larger pipeline running more oil in the heart of the Great Lakes. That choice today is still in the hands of the people of Michigan. Our movement has grown over 15 years of struggle. And today, the decision on whether or not to replace the existing Line 5 pipeline with a disastrous oil tunnel, and guess what? The experts, the only experts that have evaluated this from Enbridge's side, the same kind of consultants that were responsible for evaluating Enbridge's work prior to the 2010 Kalamazoo oil spill. When actual experts look at the facts, like the experts employed by MyCan, Oil and Water Don't Mix, other organizations, folks who are experts in the field and have come forward, we know that this oil tunnel scheme potentially couldn't even be built because of the rock conditions Enbridge has already found, because Enbridge is not anticipating water infiltration, even though their own data showed them that the rock they'll be drilling through is more porous than gravel. Enbridge is for some reason not anticipating these things. Our Great Lakes hang in the balance, and the people of Michigan still have the opportunity to say no. Governor Whitmer and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy is deciding this year on permits to allow Enbridge to build an oil tunnel underneath the Great Lakes. And the people have to step up and say no. There's public comment coming up. There's public comment happening right now. You all know about that. I just encourage everybody here today to stay loud, stay strong on this issue, keep putting it before our governor, before the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, because the public of Michigan are the owners of the Great Lakes. The state is entrusted with caring for the Great Lakes in perpetuity. Make them hold up their end of the bargain. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks so much, Sean, for that piece. I want to turn to a couple of our local Kalamazoo groups now, and in particular the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council that has been in this fight and this cleanup on the Kalamazoo River for so long. Dr. Doug McLaughlin, Executive Director. Come tell us what these impacts look like today.
Thank you very much, Denise, for the opportunity to be here to join with everyone in this acknowledgement. The Kalamazoo River, as Denise mentioned, has had many decade history of neglect and challenges from pollution sources, from a sense that the river was not the natural asset that it really is, that instead it was a place for waste to be disposed of. That has changed. The Kalamazoo River now is a very desirable place to be. It's made it in far more people's minds as a place that is to be cared for. It is to be celebrated, it is to be enjoyed, and it is to be learned about. All of that is at the core of the mission of the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council, to engage people in the river that's here, to also understand about the pollution that has happened in the past and the work that still needs to be done. It's true that the Kalamazoo River, for part of for the region where the oil spill had severe impact, has recovered, but it never recovers to the same ecosystem that it was before. It's an enjoyable place to go to, but it is ultimately extremely important that the magnitude of impact that took place here is always remembered and is well understood. We continue to be involved in a 24/7, 365 need for attention for the kinds of impacts that can happen far and wide across the landscape. Today's activities were particularly poignant for me as we not only engaged in a land acknowledgement and also a water ceremony. It drives home for those of us who are very much in a Western culture mindset the role that land and water play together. And one of the reasons that we enjoy being outside is for all of the living creatures that we have the opportunity to be a part of and to enjoy. So again, I encourage all of those in this fight to continue the fight. I encourage all of those listening and all of those that we come in contact with to understand that it is continual attention that's required for this great natural asset, the Kalamazoo River, to continue to be that natural asset in the present and into the future for all the communities that exist in the watershed. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug and KRWC, for all the great efforts and for hosting what should have been a Canoe the Kazoo. Next up, we became friends trying to get the PCBs out of Kalamazoo, and she founded the organization that lives on to make sure we don't make mistakes like this again. Iris Potter, come on up.
Thanks, Denise. Pretty emotional right now. It was very sobering to be down at the river and to be at a water ceremony again. We did one anniversary event 10 years ago, and all of a sudden I'm just so emotional. I wonder why. I'm so glad that our Indigenous and non-Indigenous partners and everyone, including my water protector friends from all around the state, by the way, the Kalamazoo Remembers and Great Lakes Water Protectors teams, we're all here together on the Kalamazoo. Oh, and those people who were going to paddle. And some who did, who I've talked to. You know why we're here? Because we love our beautiful beaches and waters of the Great Lakes, our rivers, including the Straits up north, right? So you all will have an opportunity to paddle at our annual Pipe Out Paddle Up event at our Labor Day weekend at the Straits. See our table over there for the flyers. So today is the call to action, because Line 5 and No Tunnel are the top issues for the future of the Great Lakes, meaning all life in and around it. Life for all Michiganders would be affected by an L5 spill. Time is ticking. As you know, it already has spilled millions of gallons along its route. Most people think of the Straits. It goes a long way. You can see our map over there. So my experience and impact from the massive and destructive, and I will say that, oil that Enbridge perpetrated on us 15 years ago, was right away, after I heard about it on the news, and this was today because it was not reported right away, so it was today, 15 years ago, I quickly drove to the Galesburg Bridge, which is 27 miles from Talmadge Creek, where the leak was found by a creek resident. I got out of the car, walked onto the bridge, and immediately was in shock and overcome by toxic oil and chemical fumes. My eyes burned too. I saw workers setting oil booms to contain, but I had to leave in a minute because I was so sick. I was also mad and sad. I had to do something. I went to the meetings here in Battle Creek with Enbridge officials and became more angry. I even confronted the Enbridge CEO with the question, is this tar sands oil, which is the worst? And he quietly said, yes. Word had already been circling that that's what it was. I too, like Linda, offered to help with bird and animal cleaning, and the river area was shut down for weeks. We kept hearing of people being sick and losing their homes and more. And I could go on about it. We are always looking for people who are impacted, but a lot of people do not want to talk. So now, just envision that in the Straits and beyond. A spill happens when you least expect it, and quickly, the beauty is gone. Believe me. I also want to share that the proposed tunnel boring process will result in a milky, toxic waste released back into the Straits water. There are also indigenous historical cultural resources on those bottomlands, which are to be protected, and also by the public trust doctrine of Michigan. Governor Whitmer and state officials are to uphold that trust and protect us. She ended Enbridge's easement over 4 years ago, so they are evicted, and she has the power to stop it all. She must, for us and for all, make a safe place for the next generations of young ones, and so that there are fish for our future. We know you will join our call for action if you already are not, which many of you are, and I appreciate it so much. I enjoy working with you. There are hundreds of businesses and organizations who oppose. We will shut down dirty Enbridge in Michigan. We do remember, and never again, because water is life. I also want to thank everyone who worked so hard to make this event happen, and for those, I'm so sorry, who are impacted today and sick from it. Please visit our Kalamazoo Remembers and Great Lakes Water Protectors table over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. For those of us that live here, it does get a little emotional today. We're going to bring things back out to the big picture and the national scene. With us today is Beth Wallace, Director of Climate and Energy at the National Wildlife Federation. Beth?
Thank you so much for having me, Denise. And like Iris and others, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember pulling up to Sailor's Landing and seeing the oiled muskrats and the oiled geese and trying to call the sign, and it went to nobody, and the only people that were responsible for responding to health issues, to wildlife, to everything was Enbridge. All we could do was rely on Enbridge. So with that, I say that we're standing at a critical moment in the fight to protect our water and land and our communities from a corporation that has repeatedly put profits over people. Enbridge, this Canadian oil giant, has been allowed to operate its pipeline under dangerous policies, which is running them to fail. And when they do fail, the consequences, as we know, are catastrophic. Yet Enbridge has shown that they care more about expediting their empire than they do about learning from their mistakes. Let's start with this spill. In 2010, it ruptured in Marshall, causing one of the largest spills in U.S. history. And with Enbridge's so-called state-of-the-art alarm systems, they failed to see the spill, they failed to respond to the spill, and their response ended up being a complete sham, smoke and mirrors. Instead of being held accountable, they capitalized on that emergency and used it to fast-track an expansion of Line 6B to now Line 78, doubling its capacity, while we're still sucking oil out of the river and skirting really critical environmental reviews. Now look at Line 5, a decrepit pipeline 30 years older than the one that ruptured in Marshall. It is a ticking time bomb and is under the Straits of Mackinac, yet Enbridge has done nothing but lie, delay, and endanger the Great Lakes. They covered up safety violations, they lied to Michigan officials about the easement conditions, and they refused to obtain proper insurance. When Governor Whitmer shut them down, Enbridge refused and ignored her, waging legal attacks on our indigenous sovereignty and on state authority. Now they're at it again, putting a dangerous oil tunnel under the Great Lakes. They've manufactured another fake emergency to narrow reviews, avoiding legal scrutiny. And why? Because Enbridge knows that if anybody took a real look at this project, it would not move forward. And what's worse, our own state agencies, the very ones that were stuck here sucking oil out of the river, seem to be playing right into the hands, refusing to properly assess risk for a pipeline that poses a disaster for 20% of the world's fresh water. So I ask you, who are the decisions really serving? They're not the people of Michigan, they're not the tribes who have stewarded these waters for generations, and not the millions who rely on the Great Lakes. Not only The only winner here is Enbridge, the company that has a cycle of abuse and deception for our communities. We cannot let them get away with this again, and we must demand accountability. We must stand up to our waters for our climate and our future, because if we don't, Enbridge will keep lying, keep spilling, and keep putting profits over people until the next disaster strikes. And Enbridge is in court right now arguing that they have a right to operate Line 5 until failure. They are also arguing with the state of Michigan that they don't have a right to look at the risk of drilling and blasting in the Great Lakes for 5 to 6 years, or pulling incredible amounts of water from the reserves that the people in that area rely on. And so we demand that the state of Michigan, in their permitting process, step up to the plate and fulfill their duty, and that we, until August 29th, have an opportunity to get it right. And we must demand that they follow their duty. And this is not just for the state of Michigan, anybody across the country, because the Great Lakes are held in public trust and are an international treasure. Everybody can comment. And so we're encouraging everybody from now until August 29th to require EGLE to do their job and fulfill their duty and take a full look at this project, because we know if they did, it would not move forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Beth. The message is clear. We can learn from our mistakes here, folks. We know better, and now we can do better. These speakers have made clear that we must not repeat these mistakes. Everyone is united now on moving forward and commenting on the EGLE permit process. It is the last permit, folks, that is out there. We need you to call Governor Whitmer and Director Phil Roos and tell them that we cannot pass another permit for this destructive, devastating oil tunnel. I'll now open it up to any questions from the media. Please say your name and a specific outlet before asking your question. If anybody's still here. Hi, Lester.
So what are you,
Our speakers come up.
what are you willing to do to make, to stop this line, this tunnel from getting through? What are you willing to do?
What are we willing to do, advocates? You want to come up and help me out with that, speakers? A question from Lester Graham, the famous environmental reporter of Michigan. What are we willing to do? Okay, good.
First and foremost, the state absolutely has to fulfill their duty. If they are not following through on the full permit that is required under the Submerged Lands Act, then they will face legal lawsuits. That'll be the next step in this battle.
What do you think, Nichole?
You know, it's a long time that we've been expected to follow the rules set, the procedures set, and that's what we're prepared to do. That's what we've been doing for the past 15 years plus. And if they do not follow along with their own processes and procedures and realize this is not permissible, if they do not understand that we're looking for everyone, now's the time to make the comment, because if they do not say this is far beyond minimal impacts to the environment, to the public trust, then they fail to do their duty. And I think most people here remember Standing Rock. Our indigenous people and nations and our allies aren't going to let this happen. We cannot. We cannot. So if they want us to be up there camping out and bring our drums and bring our medicines, we're ready to do that.
I hope that answers the question. Anybody else? Any other press left? Anybody online? No questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for being out here. Thank you to these incredible speakers. Again, all of these organizations are united. We work together because that's what it takes to shut down a fossil fuel giant, right? We are the David in the Goliath situation, folks, and the only thing we have, unless any of you are billionaires, never mind anyways, the only thing we have is people power. Huh? And that has to mean something in a democracy, and civic engagement has worked, and we're going to make sure that it continues to work. Thank you all so much for coming out and being part of this event today. everybody.